ואף על פי שלחיר אלא שייך חילוק במניין הרצון וכידוע, so we really, like I stated, the will is the will. There's no differences. וכידוע שהסחולס היסחלקוס הככס באודם התחתן היא מהחוכמה ולמטה. The place where there starts to be differences is from the level of intellect. Not the whole being of the person is his will and his pleasure. That's without any details. But where things start getting detailed, that starts from chokhmah. That's the intellectual capacities going on to the emotional attributes and capacities. So, the highest one is chokhmah, the wisdom. Not so with the will. That's the idea of something which is all-encompassing. It's the whole person. But nevertheless, within something which is encompassing, there's something which encompasses tighter, closer, and that's called the closer in encompassment. The makif hakorev and has samuch, which is close. Similarly, within the will itself, and like we see, so now, and the Rebbe, when he said the Maimer, you hear this nuance a little bit more, in my opinion, than the way it's written here, but it's not the same when you have the will to do something that you understand, so that you get it, so it's easier to do, and you don't have to push yourself as much, to the will that you would have to do a statute that you don't understand, which is higher than comprehension and intellect. Now you want to fulfill them both. The mitzvah you understand, the mitzvah that's tougher to understand. But the will is stronger when it comes to something that you don't understand, so then you have to you push yourself more. But the mitzvahs that make sense, that are called rulings, that we may have come up with on our own, without the Torah being given, there's intellect involved, which therefore that covers up and conceals the pushing of your will. So then if there's something that you do understand, then you don't have this element of, in a revealed sense, of this is really a strong heeding of God's will. God says it's a statute which I have instituted, a decree which I have decreed, and you have no permission to even contemplate and think about this to see what may be. So, let's continue. This is how it works in terms of how a person serves God, in terms of the contemplation. When we contemplate about what kind of mitzvahs that we do. So, any service of God, everything that you do starts with contemplation, thinking. Nobody does anything. I know this sounds funny because it says, hey, what were you thinking? I wasn't thinking, right? You didn't think, so you just did it. But ultimately, every person, you have to think before you do anything, even if it's not the wisest thought. So, when we serve God and we think about what and how to serve, everything starts with contemplation. Since we are thinking and contemplating with our intellect, so there are many levels. There is indeed, I wasn't thinking, right? Or thinking more and thinking less, etc., etc. Now, in order to get somewhere, so the Torah tells us, the Shulchan Aruch tells us that in order to fulfill the mitzvahs properly, and to serve God, you have to contemplate about the greatness of God and then the lowliness of mankind. And that affects by the person proper submission, subservience. Therefore, there's a difference between the amount of submission one will accomplish and get to if they think about how the lowliness of mankind, or you think about the greatness of God. This is also the basic difference between the two ways, the two movements in terms of serving that are expressed in our actual service to God. Right? Half, or it's not half, but there's the part of us that we have to veer away and negate and abstain from what we're not supposed to do. That's called surmera, veer away from evil. And then there's the vasei toiv, the things that we have to commit to, that we have to fulfill, that the positive commandments that have to be done. And that I was going to bring another subset here too. So, so when you think about the greatness of God, that affects primarily and connected primarily with doing good, doing the positive. And the contemplation in the lowliness of mankind is connected primarily with the veering away from evil. If it's in terms of the contemplation about the lowliness of man, when we think about the loneliness of man and the potential that a person has to descend into God knows what. So when we think about that, so a person then becomes exceedingly, if we do this correctly, exceedingly careful and cautious from all things that one may come to, because a person is in a lowly position and connected with all kinds of things. And to the extent, let's go back a second. So the person is careful from all these things because the person ultimately is in a situation of being connected to lowliness. So therefore, thinking about this draws your attention and cognizance and awareness, so therefore we wouldn't do and get involved with that kind of stuff. To the extent that the ultimate cautiousness and being careful in a way that the person will not even have a will to do something which is connected with evil. You're totally submissive and subservient in this idea to making sure that you veer away from evil. But when your primary contemplation is about the greatness of God, and it's the primary, because even somebody who's focusing primarily in the greatness of God, but still have to take into account the lowliness of man. Everyone has to take that into account. There's as is known, there's a parable about this. That good should remain good. You need to have clean vessels. Therefore, there has to be first veer away from evil. The only thing is that primary, there's I was saying this, it's a word of ikar, the primary, the main focus by certain individuals, or when you get to a certain level, is about the greatness of God. there will again be differences in how the contemplation will take place. Yes, and therefore there will be a difference in the levels that of the submission and subservience that are the effect of this contemplation. But all this is connected. This is about the good, doing good. That's the contemplation of the greatness of God. The Rebbe points out that in the continuation of the Maimer of his Rebbe, the previous Rebbe a person the whole time you have to be able you have choices. A person has to choose the whole time. And therefore, a person, by making the proper choices, you are refining. You are taking the good, you're keeping the good, and neglecting the not good. So a person has to choose and refine and separate between what's called oichel upseilis, food, and then what's either byproduct or in pseilis means the garbage, the junk, but it's a relative term. So let's say somebody, and this is also something that we have commonly in the laws of Shabbos. We're not supposed to, we cannot take out the food something that we don't want. We have to take what we do want, and that's how you're allowed to choose on Shabbos. Otherwise, it's considered work. So that could be even within food itself. Let's say someone has peas and carrots, and they only want the peas. You can't remove all the carrots. You have to take out the peas. Now, let's say someone has peas and carrots and shells that got mixed in. So the shells are certainly not good, but even when it's something which is good, but what you want, only one part of the good. So there's different levels in what you can choose out. So there's two ways. There's a way that the refinement comes from below to above. That's the idea of this is veering away from evil. Till they're able to refine and neglect and subjugate and cause to be subservient even the most lightest type of evil. The second way is when the refinement comes from above to below. The refinement happens because you think about the greatness of God, then everything else is dissipated. Hakshure, meaning the asay tov, that comes with an abundance of doing good. Like it's explained at length in that maimer, the details. This is also, generally speaking, the difference between the way a tzaddik, an all-righteous person, serves God, to the way the service of master of penitence, a Baal Tshuva, somebody who has come closer and repented and returned. Or, for that matter, the service of a Beinoni. A Beinoni is like the Beinoni that it says in Tanya, somebody who has a Yetzer Hara and has a Yetzer Tov, has an evil inclination, a good inclination, but he never listens to the evil inclination to do an action that's not good. Everyone else, sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. You understand? But the Beinoni never does the action. He always abstains. He always subjugates. He always subdues the Yetzer Hara. A tzaddik already got rid of his Yetzer Hara. So the hine Baal Tshuva kivun shesureira, the one who the tshuva, since he was already involved in, and he was involved in evil beforehand. Then you have to veer away from this evil. But even so, with a Beinoni, since the evil inclination of a Beinoni is still bad, as strong as it was, just like from when he was born, from when he started, on the contrary, his Yetzer Hara got stronger. As he was more and more successful, his challenges got greater, because he never got rid of his Yetzer Hara, and therefore his Yetzer Hara is still strong, but he doesn't listen. Nishchazik Yesha Behem Shchazman, the evil inclination gets stronger as time goes on. Shenishtamish Beharbe, he used his animal soul very much as he gets older. He ate more. Ba'achilo Shtia, he drank more. Sharin Yoni Lamhazen, everything else that he did in the world with this. Right? Not in a bad way, but his Yitzhahara got a lot of exercise. He's strong. Well, he has not yet transformed his evil inclination to the good inclination. So Yitzhak's transformation. Now, everybody could do some type of a transformation, but here I was talking about this type of Yitzhak that a tzaddik has done. Therefore, you have to go from the bottom up. Not so. The service of a tzaddik, because the tzaddik has no evil at all. We say to him, more than that, he got to such a level that he transformed the evil to good. The tzaddik is only occupied in good. Like it'll be when Mashiach comes in the future to come. It says the spirit of impurity I will remove from the earth. Then it'll be the idea of because God is infinite, and we'll be able to see more and more godliness, more and more continuous growth and progress from strength to strength. And with every strength within good itself, even though you already don't have evil, but we're able to continue to progress. And this is in Tillim chapter 83, which happened to be the Rebbe's kapitel, the chapter of Tillim of the Rebbe. This mimer was said 40 years ago. It's chapter 84. I'm sorry. V'ad la'aliyah be'efen shahadaga hakedemes. Ein nechsheves klal be'erech l'daga zechayel shigiyah. When you're going from strength to strength, every accomplishment, the new level of strength is already so high that the previous level is like nothing in relation to the new one that he reached. This is the refinement within good itself. This is like taking the food from within the food, taking the piece from carrots, not the piece from the shells. And to keep on progressing higher and higher, like it says in the end of that same verse, he will appear and see God in Zion. Just like this, serving God in terms of the refinement has two ways: the veering away from evil and doing good. There's also two ways of progress, which is, in generally speaking, in serving God. Like it says that I will go in the previous parsha, and that I will be caused to go. So that's two types of going. Going from bottom up and from the supernal realm down. This is generally speaking the difference between serving God with prayer, which is considered a ladder, like we've mentioned many times. It's a ladder which is lodged in the ground, but its head is peaked in the heavens. So it goes from the lowest level to the highest level. And you can climb those rungs, rung by rung, through prayer, approaching God, beseeching God, getting closer to God, talking directly to God. And then there's the Torah study. Regarding the Torah, Moses tells us that God let us hear his voice out of heaven. Like it says in the Torah, when we're going to read about the giving the Torah and Shuas upcoming, and God went down, descended to Mount Sinai, in a way of drawing down from above to below. Hey, you can take this to the bank, like Rabbi Menachem says. We could really explain why are what is this grouping in the mimer, and the way the continuum is working of the topics. The Rebbe says here, these topics, Nasa v'nishma, that we will do and then we will hear, which is representative of the accepting the yoke and then progressing. And then the way of the refinement, first from from below to above, and then from above to below. We could say, why is this? How will we understand this connection? The way he compares in the Maimer this idea of prayer and Torah study, which is the idea of the idea of ascension and descension, right? From below to above, then from above to below. That is like we'll do and then we will hear. When you say we'll do, that's connected to the world, to action, and the world of action. That's the idea of prayer, lodged in the earth, in this worldly level. And through that, you connect to the will of God. And then, even higher than that, to the master of the will. When you get up to, you keep on ascending from below to above. The nishma, what does the nishma, the learning, the hearing, represent? And here the Rebbe will also define that a little bit. It includes also the understanding and the explanation, the logical explanation. He's able to bring down and draw his intellectual capacity, to contemplate the way in things the way they are here in the lowest realm, but then he's able to accomplish the idea of, and we will hear from the term that means, in order to hear means to assimilate, to get everything together, to bring it all in, to gather it up and get a grip, so to speak. Lekabitz is calling it using this to collect all of the sparks that there are here. In other words, to be able to refine the world and take all the faculties and elevate everything. How? Because you're coming with that attitude, you're coming from above to below to be able to refine the world. And in addition to this idea of the yoke of heaven and the fulfillment of the mitzvahs, and both of them, we said, we have the idea of proceeding, we will do till we will hear. Now, I just want to go over real briefly here in Ha'ara 34, footnote 34, it points out how it explains it there in the previous mimer, and that here it's a little bit different in this mimer, different than that mimer. It's pointed out here. So in the mimer there of the previous Rebbe, it says, in again footnote 34, this is where the Rebbe is talking about the connection of Nasa v'nishma and Torah and Tefillin from above to below, etc. So there it says that the serving of God with we will do and then we will hear is proper way of serving. But the main advantage, the main thing that's better than everything is the idea that we proceed, we will do till we will hear. This idea of the Kabbalah sale, the acceptance of the yoke. And similarly, the Friedrich Rebbe says, even though the Shema itself is a very complete and radiant way of serving God. But the most choice of service is Torah study. Why? Its primary things to draw down and to reveal godliness. It also brings about and evokes the godliness that's connected with the Torah in a supernal awakening in and of itself. It doesn't matter what you're up to here. The words of Torah are innately holy. Now, the star goes to the Shuli Hagilion, to the very bottom of the page, which is a note from the publisher, but this is also a note from Rabbi Yoel Khan, the Rebbe's disciple and student, who transcribed in Mamorim, and usually from memory when it was said on a Shabbos or Yom Tov. This one there's a recording of, but nevertheless he puts in this note because we have to understand that that's not exactly what the Rebbe is saying here. So lahoyer shahabir delakamo bifnim hu be'efen acher. So this that we're going to read a little bit, that we read already, is a little bit different than the way the Frierdiker Rebbe says it. He's pointing out that this is the Rebbe's chiddush here. Shenasa v'nishma him tefillah v'toira. Nasa and nishma is the idea of prayer and Torah study. Then more than that is the idea that it precedes. We proceed nasa to nishma. The primary part, the first idea, and its root and source and root is Kabbalah Soil. That's the etc. So he points out this nuance, how it's different than the previous Rebbe's Maimer. It's not usual for such a thing to happen, but once in a while we do have this, and I just figured we'd point it out. Because obviously he felt that this is obvious from how the Rebbe said it in the Maimer, but he shared it with us the way he understood it. So again, in paragraph 5 here, the Rebbe is comparing the previous Rebbe's Maimer, and nevertheless he's saying where the previous Rebbe's Maimer is talking about Shema, but then Torah study. Here he's talking about that general idea of prayer and Torah study, and the idea of Nasa and Nishma. Okay. The Nasa v'Nishma. The Rebbe continues it here. In addition to the idea of Nasa and Nishma, we'll hear there is this nuance of preceding Nasa to Nishma. That's the general idea of accepting the yoke. That is the beginning of the service of God, and its most fundamental thing. It's the main thing that you have to have, and the root of all service. So this is continuing what he explains, how the Rebbe is explaining this nuance. Like it's explained at length in the Tanya, chapter 41. This is the idea of being submissive and subservient to the master of the will, not just the will itself, but the bigger picture here. The way it's higher than even his will, just to be submissive and subservient to him himself. That's why he's called the master of the will. At that level, there is no difference between statutes and mitzvahs that are rulings that we understand. Because now we're just talking about God himself. It doesn't make a difference if we understand it, don't understand. The whole discussion doesn't exist. The other type of mitzvah, the testimonials, etc. This submission is a much higher type of submission than to be submissive to the will, to the detail of the mitzvah. To the extent you can't even say it's much higher. It's in a different league, totally. It's higher than the differences of levels in how much you're submitting to the extent of what you understand and what you don't understand, and how you're going to perform the mitzvah. Because this submission, this subservience, is that you're totally submitted and you're totally subservient. There's no definition available and possible about such a thing. It can't even be described. It can't be drawn. It can't be illustrated. It can't be explained. Zayin. And since, generally speaking, when we're serving God, this idea of the acceptance of the yoke of heaven and submission to the will of God is, like we said, all-encompassing. It's not detailed. Therefore, the reward is like this. So we know from the reward you can know its makeup, what it's about. Shekosher dimini na kesa. This is connected with the idea of a crown. Remember, they got a crown. So what is a crown? This is the two crowns that they got. One for Nasa, one for Nishma. Ki amidas Nasa v'Nishma ha'itzakoydim matan Torah v'kabbalas ha'Torah. They said that they will do and they will hear. That happened before the giving of the Torah and the receiving of the Torah. It was their preparation on the eve of the giving of the time of the giving of the Torah. Therefore, this was higher than the faculties which are enclosed within the body. This was a very general sense that they were going to be devoted to God. Was total submission. Therefore, the reward for this was the crown. A crown, again, is a very general thing. It's illustrative of the fact that the monarch is the one who rules. What's the crown? Crown is a nice hat, so what? But it's the idea, to the extent that in those countries they say it's the crown versus whatever. Here we say it's the U.S., the United States versus whatever. There it's the crown versus, because the crown is the whole encompassment of everything that it stands for. So, Velochin hoye zebeiv shalom Velochin hoye gam haschar shubzag the inyan akes shekoshlam beis ksurim. They got two crowns. The angels tied two crowns to them. Echad keneged nasav echad nishma. One for this idea of the doing, and one for the study involved. Amlam bekeser gufa, but within the crown itself, and this idea of keser, even in the terms of how God relates to us in creation, even though it is something which surrounds, it's on top of the head. But nevertheless, there's a size that your head is, right? So it has to be in relation to the size of the head, the measurement of the head. I'll call upon the keser. And that's how the crown has to be measured out. Has to be the size of the head that the crown is on. To the extent that the Talmud tells us regarding the kingdom, the kings of the house of David, they were, of course, the befitting to be the kings. The Talmud says that the crown rested nicely. Rashi explains the word that it sat nicely on the head, and it was fitting exactly to the size of the head. So that shows us that even though it's encompassing, it's surrounding, it's resting on top of the head, but it snugly fits in the head. That means that it's in relation, in comparison to the side and the size and limitation of the head. So then there's another higher level. But when we come to the level of submission to the master of the will, this is higher than all the wills. And the master of the will himself, the way he is, in such a level, and the highest type of level, then it can't even be connected to the crown. See what I was getting to? That's why the third reward, that's why there wasn't a third crown. Because they connected to God on a level that was higher than crownage, if that's a word. Why? Because the crown, shahudak lavush, is only a garment, lahaguf, for the body. It might be a very, very exquisite type of garment. Lavush al rosh, it's a garment on the head. It's nevertheless only a garment laharosh for the head. And even more than that, it's only the size of the head. Right? It can't be something huge. It won't be a crown. Therefore, there couldn't be a third crown. That couldn't be the reward corresponding to their fact that they preceded Nasa to Nishma. Why? Because it's higher than the whole reason why they should even have a crown. That would only be, it would be a not the word I'm looking for, not a dissension, but you would be going down to a lower level, a descent to even reward this with a crown, because then that would illustrate that it's connected already to something which is limited. And here we're talking about total devotion to God Almighty, which is unlimited, etc., at that level. So this is why the Talmud says that when the Israelites preceded Nasat and Ishma, indeed, that was necessary that they preceded it. Because ultimately, the idea of giving the Torah, God said, He is bestowing His soul within the writing. God says, I myself, my soul, in writing I give. You're taking me, specifically me. So through the Torah, and that's already the master of the will. Therefore, they had to precede Nasat and Ishma. They had to get to that level. The submission to the master of the will. More than that, then there's also the time. That's what got them the reward at that moment, that time. Because they had to straddle and jump into to take it from that level into the realm of time, umokim and space. At least in a way, relationship to how great this advantage of the idea that they had this accepting of yoke of heaven. And then it's connected also in a fashion that it's connected to the angels, the serving angels. They had the capability and ability to tie crowns to the children of Israel, even though souls are higher than the angels. Even higher than the serving angels. It will be seen in a revealed sense in the future to come when Mashiach comes. Like everything in the future to come will be revealed. Like the verse says, it will be said to Jacob and Israel, their spot will be even closer within. By the angels, the angels will ask, Ma po al kael, what did God do? Like this is, by the way, in the prophecy of Balak, about when Mashiach comes. So we will tell what the angels what God accomplished. So if that's the case, why are the angels the ones coming along giving the reward? So the Rebbe says, even nevertheless, the angels of service are the ones that give the Israelites the two crowns. One for we will do, one for we will hear, because of their importance, and that we're still in the process of getting to that level. But since this is the submission to the master of the will, this is higher than any idea of a garment. An involvement, higher than the crown. So the Rebbe says we have both of these ideas, but that's why there was two crowns and not three, because the third was the idea of our connection, which is higher than anything. This is a good preparation to the ultimate and the fulfillment of all these things, which will be in the future to come when Mashiach comes. We already had the great revelation. It's already happened. Bishaah, at the giving of the Torah, like it's written in Tanya, we are able to hear God. So when Mashiach comes, we'll have the fulfillment of the prophecy that says in Isaiah, your guide and teacher will not be hidden anymore. Your eyes will be able to see your teacher, meaning God. The Torah will be in its fullest and its ultimate. The mitzvahs will be in the ultimate and the fullest. Like the true mitzvahs of the will of God, like we say in the prayer. Will have the revelation of the level of the innermost of this lofty level within God called Atik, which is also the idea of the crown. And it's the beginning of the God's wanting to create and connect and process, and therefore at that level, with the Tzimtzum and all this process, like we've discussed many times in the chain of creation, Atik is at the top of this transformation. Within Atik itself, there's an inner part and an outer part. This is the innermost of the pleasure of God, because it's His goal and therefore His pleasure when it gets fulfilled. Therefore, it's higher than any measurement or limitation. This high lofty level will come down to the lowest level. To the extent that we'll have the fulfillment of the prophecy, that all flesh will see together, that we'll be able to see everything with actual sight and vision. All of this is hastened. Even more so because in every single year these days are re-experienced and remembered and actually re-experienced. In addition to the fact that every single day this has to be like something new. And especially when these days are coming, beginning from the Rosh Chodesh of the third month, like it says before the Torah giving, it says in the third month it came to the Mount Sinai. Therefore it says, the third month, how do you know which day of the month? The Talmud tells us, that ever quotes it here. It says, on this day they came to the Mount Sinai, it was Rosh Chodesh. We learn it in a way because it has the same wording as the first time the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh was given to us, when God tells Moses, HaChodesh Hazeh. The same word Hazeh. You recognize the word? It says Hazeh there when God tells Moses, this new moon, this one, Hazeh, this. And it says by Yom Hazeh, and this, so it means it was Rosh Chodesh. Hazeh Daikah, specifically Hazeh. Now the first time, God told Moses this moon, and He showed him with His finger, with God's finger. So that means something that we actually see. We're able to point to it. They came to the Mount Sinai, and Israel camped there. Lashon Yochid, it says in the singular, and he camped. Neged Hahor, corresponding to the mountain. That means there was total unity facing the mountain. And then the subsequent days, it gets drawn further. Especially the days that they were sanctioned off and had to get ready. And afterwards it's the eve of the time of the giving of our Torah. And afterwards the actual time of the giving of our Torah, and we will experience all these days every single year. These things that we remember in these days, to the extent that they are done, they are experienced. Their action. That from our perspective, everything's already accomplished, everything is done. That was in the Yiddish here. This hastens, speeds up even more so. But eventually, even if you look at it, in a sense that He doesn't even hold us back like the blink of an eye, like it was at like it says in Order 55, the way it was at the Exodus from Egypt, and that immediately they are redeemed. From all of the limitations and all the all the constraints. All the restraints, constraints, and limitations are dissipated and nullified. Even the holy ones. And again, the Rebbe quotes the verse, because your teacher won't be hidden and hidden anymore, concealed. Your eyes will see your teacher. Speedily nowadays, actually, so begula mitzvah shlema, the truthful redemption. Mashiach said, "Came through our righteous Mashiach lower than 10 handbreadths," meaning actually so b'pnimius. And like the Rebbe said regarding that we receive the Torah every single year, it has to be with happiness and inwardly. So the Rebbe uses that term here. He said in many letters that he says like his teacher and his Rebbe said. And that's obligatory on us to emulate this, to wish and to strive for, to get the Torah in happiness. And inwardly, the simchas elam al reisham, the greatest happiness of the whole world, of the greatest joy, which is the reference to the coming of Mashiach, which it says in Isaiah a couple of times, that'll be on their head. And like it says here, that's what we're talking about, our head. He finishes the mimer also, we got the crown on our head. So everyone should have a wonderful Shavuos. B'lineder will do the other two Mamorim, and we'll get it done. Chaim.